defining bridges? Sorry.
Yeah, where is it? Where does it exist? Like, where can you find this learning bridge? Inside the switch?
Yes, it's a kind of switch. Yes.
In this switch way.
Yeah, usually a lot of this, the way this stores it is in some sort of hash map. Typically, is what they'll end up doing, like a hash table. But a lot of this is done on the hardware side of things. It's not even really, it's not something you really program. It's built into the hardware itself, like a switch for a network.
It has its own operating system, right? That means it has its own operating system, and based on that, it has some kind of like hash table. You say it, right?
Yeah.
That it stores like all the MAC addresses, whatever, because it's in local RAM, right? It's in local network.
Yeah, local networks. So I'm trying to understand your question.
Oh, sorry. Okay.
What group are you in? 5?
Huh?
Okay, group 5. Yeah. Yeah, you have a question?
I was gonna ask, I totally forgot. It'll come to me in a sec, sorry.
We can come back to you.
Yeah.
Okay, you said.
In relation to the RFID tags, I know we'll probably talk about this in class, but I know that there's a concern in regards to it can easily be read by some other like form of
Another
does it have any sort of like, is there any sort of like thing built into it that could, I guess, prevent that? Or like
in kind of, you mean basically an encryption scheme?
Yeah, is there like any sort of encryption that can kind of protect it from?
Not really.
Not
I mean, the best way is if you have like RFID chip.
Yeah.
Now, if I really wanted to protect this, I needed to have a special wallet that actually shields it so that it's in here, because pretty much anyone could read it. Now, the data itself is encrypted. So even though you read it, you don't know what you have until you decrypt it. Unlike magnetic strips, that's not encrypted at all. It's what you swipe it and all your information is on that. So the RFID chip is good in the sense of you can encrypt the data on it, and that's the key thing is so long as you put encrypted data on it, you get encrypted data, and only the reader that has actual decryption routine, so the way it's going to get decrypted. Next question?
I remembered my question. In regards to Bluetooth, you said it was used for entertainment. Is there a possibility for it to eventually get video, like to stream video across Bluetooth? Because I haven't been able to find anything that does that yet. No?
I know from my experience, at least in Bluetooth, it is extremely slow, and it's pretty impractical to do such a thing. One thing I did see though is that 802.11 technology is now being used for something called GigaPhi, where essentially you can pair two devices basically over a local Wi-Fi network. So if you ever use like Wi-Fi Direct, for instance, you can see how blazing fast that is. You end up doing that with local devices. So if you ask me, I think that's where we end up going. I don't see a lot of ability to do that with Bluetooth, at least. You could try that, probably very low quality.
I mean, there is.
I've seen like a few things, like my phone has something called turbo downloading, and it allows me to go off the bandwidth of Verizon, and then off of Wi-Fi and off of Bluetooth. So I can like download files like off of all three if I'm close enough.
How's it?
Well, I don't know. I haven't tried it.
It's basically flooding the phone.
Yeah.
Is what it's, or flooding the device with every single antenna. Apple does something similar with AirPlay. You know, that it doesn't use it uses Wi-Fi, but it's basically a line of sight thing, and that's the biggest difference. Because if you're outside of 10 meters, it's not going to use it. If you're inside of 10 meters, okay, I can use that. So it's going to help. It just helps with the data itself.
I know another thing to add on to that is that if you guys remember NFC, using NFC to basically pair your Bluetooth together to the phones like instantly. I know Samsung ended up incorporating a little thing in the background and tell people about, but 2 Samsung devices would do it, and they're on the same Wi-Fi network. They would transfer over the Wi-Fi network because it was much faster than just doing it over Bluetooth. And so I'm not sure, maybe that's probably answer your question a little bit more too, but that's where I see the technology a bit faster there. And actually, before we answer another question, I want to show you guys the source code really quick. I almost forgot to do that.
We had another question.
There's the source code if you guys want to see that. I wrote it in a framework called Corona. And and I just use Sublime Text as my editor. And all this is basically just animations and buttons. And
that's where you put Nick Cage in it.
Nick Cage was created at the bottom right there. That was a last minute idea. It was his idea.
Yeah, that's right. Your question?
Oh yeah, this is a group 2 question.
Your group?
Group 6.
Group and group? 1. So we had 1, 5, 6, 2.
Is WiMAX better than LTE?
And pretty much they're almost the same and all that stuff. WiMAX is still, I mean, 2009 is like the last thing I saw anything about WiMAX. But LTE, the only difference with LTE and WiMAX actually is a lot faster than LTE, and that has to do with how fast they're upgrading the network. What we call LTE, long-term evaluation, I think it was.
Long-term evolution.
Long-term evolution is that it gives them the ability to continually add bandwidth to it, to make it faster and faster and faster. 802.16 WiMAX, it has the speed right now. I mean, it's just that type of thing. There is a convergence, so there is a question as who's going to come out with that killer app, or who's going to come out with it that really works. What they want WiMAX to do is hit 10 miles. No line of sight, just 10 miles. You put a base station right here, and I'm going to get 10 miles worth, 10 mile radius, all these homes, all that stuff. So you can pretty much instantly get a lot more subscribers.
You like here.
Alright, so on the topic of the WiMAX, will like new towers need to be built, or are you going to be using the existing cell towers?
That is the question of the providers who are going to use the actual WiMAX. I mean, because you're right, they're going to have to actually develop new towers, or they're going to use the existing towers. So the key thing is how is that going to be addressed? You think of it like AT&T and MCI. No one is old enough to remember MCI, right? Okay, one person. AT&T used to do all long distance, but it was a big monopoly. So the government decided to say, nope. We're going to break you up into separate little pieces, and we're going to allow people to play on your wires that you laid out and sell long distance services. So therefore you got Sprint, you got MCI. And as mobile phone technology came up, long distance has become a thing really of a past. There is no long distance company, I don't think.
You said that would be better than like Google Fiber, or?
Well, it's less cost effective. Think about it. I have to build one tower for however many homes are in a 10-mile radius. If I have 1 million homes, which will be pretty dang crowded if it was 1 million homes, but if I have like a 500,000 homes or 100,000 homes, and I just put one tower, I can offer the service as soon as that tower is completed. I don't have to dig up trenches. I don't have to do actually lay the fiber all over the place like Google's going to have to do. Their cost-effective measure is to say, out of all of Charlotte, this neighborhood, there's 80% of these people want it, so we're going to go there first because everyone else is less than 80%. So.
Yes. With the switches that requires it to know where the address of something is, what happens in the event that something gets disconnected from the network and then something else gets added? Does it get added in the same spot and just more or less take over it, or does it generate a new space for the new machine? And what happens if the old one that gets reconnected doesn't occupy the same thing or the same one it did previously, or a new one?
Okay, yeah, very good question. Actually, thanks for reminding me that I forgot to mention it. But essentially, the way they handle this is, a lot of this came up because of the fact that companies were getting really big, right? And their land lines were getting huge, right? They had a lot of land, networks getting humongous. And so to move your desk from one place to another was a huge project. You actually had to move the wires, like reroute the wiring to your new desk. And you have to like completely redo everything. So essentially what they did is, their solution is, well, this learning bridge, right? You have less flooding in the network and all those great things along with it. But periodically they'll also send a message to they'll still check everything. So if you're gonna say, I'm sending a message to you, right? But you're gone now, you're somewhere else. Well, every now and then, I'm just gonna check everywhere. And just when I send the message to you, I'm not gonna just take the ports to your path, I'll just check everywhere anyway to see if you've moved. And if you have, it updates it. So now the only thing you have to do when you move desks, you just plug in your laptop, walk away, wait a few minutes. Eventually it'll flood the network again to find you, and it'll update it in the hash tables. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, we're group 9. This is just, you know, off your top of our head, but with Google Fiber coming in, like, and you're saying like I guess people are saying like they want to hear, so they're like choosing what would you say their competitors are trying to do, so they won't switch over to the certain areas that, you know, they want Google Fiber to come over.
I know what AT&T's doing because I'm an AT&T customer,
Yeah.
and they are telling me that they're going to be bringing out GigaFiber ASAP, but when you actually ask them on a date, they're like, well, in your neighborhood, we're not sure yet. And I literally am thinking, until someone sees a Google Fiber in my neighborhood, I'm not going to get GigaFiber and all that stuff. I mean, that's been happening in Kansas City. That's been happening, I think even San Antonio. Is they're looking at where is Google Fiber penetrating. Now we're going to offer it there. So that's how the competitors are working it.
So along the same lines, so this is actually the first I've heard about Google Fiber not rolling out to all neighborhoods, but only rolling out to select neighborhoods. Is it a certain percentage of the homes in the neighborhood that have to have it, or is it just like the top 10 neighborhoods are going to get it and no one else?
No. It's a certain percentage of who asked for it.
Okay.
So in other words, give me an area that's really Myers Park. If Myers Park has 75%, but the university area has 115% request, guess what? We're going to the university area. Forget the rich people, and all that stuff. They literally want who wants it more. I know me. I've been going through my entire neighborhood, going, hey, give Google your email address saying you want Google Fiber, because I want Google Fiber now, or at least the competition with AT&T. Okay. I have 2 more pieces of chocolate if anyone wants to answer questions.
So like in Bridge we have that's like kind of table, right? How can we access to that?
Sorry, say that again?
In the Bridge,
Yeah.
we have kind of table, right? Which stores like MAC addresses, kind of things. So like how can we access to that?
Okay, yeah, so that's local to each bridge. So when you send a message, it also contains the source of where it came from, right? So if I'm sending a message to you, my message is going to contain my name in it. So that way, when the bridge gets it, it says, oh, this is from Joe, but I don't know where Jack's at, so it sends it everywhere, right? And so then next time you send it to me, right? It already knows it got a message from Joe on port 3, and so it just forwards it to port 3. So it's all local to the bridge. The bridge just stores the hash table of all the sources that which ports they were on. Does that make sense?
No, I mean just like how to access to the table. I want to get those informations.
I don't know.
You would actually have that direct access to
Yeah,
the
you have
bridge.
to. It's a piece of hardware.
Yeah, you would have to actually have direct access. You're not going to, the software, you're going to have to crack it, basically. You'll have to actually hack the whole bridge yourself.
And so you have to physically connect.
Well, I mean, you have to actually hack like Cisco has a bridge. You are now going to have to violate the warranty, crack that sucker open, and see how the software works. And all that stuff.
And a lot of this is done on, especially some bridges. A lot of it's done on the hardware itself. They don't actually. It's not like a system you can kind of crack into. Even then, a lot of it's just the hardware. They just have it very. I mean, it's been around for a while.
You can write the software for yourself to create a bridge. Then you'll have access to it. Is what?
Yeah, if you want to create your own bridge.
But like, what kind of thing controls that bridge?
What kind of team?
What kind of thing controls that bridge? Does it have like any kind of operating system, or does it have what does it have? Which controls that bridges?
The bridge itself is the software.
Software, or is it
it's software built into the bridge. In other words, Cisco has created a bridge and it automatically has the software in it. Kind of like a router. You buy a router, you have the software already in the router. Do you get access to the firmware? That's the question.
Just the software without operating system?
It's basically it's like firmware. It's like anything else. I mean, it has its own programming.
I mean, if you're wondering how the bridges talk to each other, like instead of the spanning tree, like they just like when you first hook them up, they'll all send out a message to everybody, figure out who's there, look at each other's MAC addresses to figure out what's the spanning tree going to be, and they all agree on it. So it's done based on the hardware. It's not really, you could try to crack into it, maybe build it yourself. But.
I mean, look at a router. When we're all allowed to connect to, let's say that's the router. All of these computers connect to it. Well, that router may not know who we all are until we actually give it credentials and saying, hey, we're allowed to have access. Now it knows all your MAC. Now it knows your MAC address.
That means that's this router.
So that router, but it's stored in the firmware. If you turn off the router and turn it back on, if depending on how the vendor developed it, they could either save it.
You can't directly connect to the router, right?
But you can. But do you have direct access?
That kind of switch ports.
I want to say is, do you have direct access to the firmware to every router that you connect to? Do you have direct access to the firmware to every router you connect to?
What is that?
That's the software that runs the router.
Oh yes, actually we can connect. Just like HTTP, like by using like it has like built-in actually like home-based like routers has like built-in like kind of like web services. We can directly connect to them and control like this.
I believe he's talking about whether the bridge has an interface similar to the routers that we have at home, that we can configure the ports and things like that.
I would say that
it's going to depend on which one you get. I think there's not just one learning bridge for everything. I mean, there's different manufacturers. I think some of them may just have a few settings on the back. Some of them may be able to connect into and change it. But I think it's.
I remember that most of them are dynamic. Most of the bridges are dynamic. So as things come on, they create the hash tables. But if something is stale, all that stuff, let's say the bridge knows 15 different ports and where to send data. Well, 5 of them stop being used for a period of time. If that period of time is a week, it could just drop those from the hash table and not know about them. That would be a dynamic hash table. So it's always going to change as devices come on and devices come off, and that not being used anymore.
How often?
That is
a few minutes. Okay, if you're asking like when you hook up a new computer to the network, it's designed so it's going to update your new I guess connection in a few minutes. So every few minutes, I'm pretty sure it's every few minutes, it's going to update and double check to see if you're actually there. Especially if it realizes you're not actually getting packages. It's going to flood and figure out where you're at.
I would say there's possibly a firmware to say how long you're going to hold on to that.
Yeah. Okay. Like does bridge this one? Okay, just one. Does bridge like work similar to a switch? Because it sounds like really
Similar to a switch. How it works? Is it similar to a switch, or is it completely different thing that we need to use?
I don't know. I mean, switches are
Switches are for the actual machines on the same LAN. The bridge connects different LANs together.
That's a great way of putting it.
that's what I was trying to think.
Very good.
So what are you trying to build?
Thank you guys for answering all the questions.
Like a little bit deeper, and just like okay, this is this thing. I don't want to understand. I want to understand a little bit deeper than just like actual knowledge, because like it's really important stuff going on.
Excellent question. Let's applaud the presenters.